I'm Mike Robinson. I'm a restaurateur and a chef. I'm also a hunter. I've been cooking professionally for 25 years, and I own 2 restaurants in Britain. They're quite different. The Pot Kiln is deep in the Berkshire countryside where I hunt, surrounded by fields. It's known for our venison Scotch eggs and our giant deer dogs and amazing venison parveys and great British ales. The other is in a smart but residential district of London, where the dishes are maybe a little more metropolitan. But they're still created with the wild venison I hunt all year round. We're very proud that the bulk of the food we serve is sustainably sourced wild food. Just up the road from my pub, I have my deer park. It's kind of my pride and joy. A deer park is something that's close to the English soul. We've had deer parks in this country for 1,000 years. And what it is a small area of land that encloses fields and woodlands. And I have a small number of deer of different species. And it's taught me so much about deer behavior.
Come on, Cuthbert. Come on, Horatio.
What it isn't is a place to hunt. Twice a year, I take out some very consistent venison for my restaurant, but the deer in there live as wild as they can. I feed them from the brewery also in the village, and the West Berkshire Brewery gives me the spent grains, which is wonderful food for deer, still warm and steaming in the winter like granola for deer. And twice a week I go in and I shovel it into the deer park, and the deer, they come running and they wolf it down. And it's an incredibly pleasurable thing to have. For me, it's a tool for education. It's a place I can take people, I can teach them about dressing deer, I can teach them about deer management, about how deer grow. It's an opportunity for people to get close to deer, much closer than they would in the wild. It's a place to learn about deer and their habits in a controlled environment. And then, you know, once or twice a year, their meat goes into the restaurant alongside the beer that the grains that they've eaten was made from. Springtime for me is the end of the deer hunting season. The fallow deer finish and the vegetation starts to get high. I can't see the muntjac anymore. Whilst for farmers, it's the beginning. It's when everything's growing, the winter crops are coming through. It's a time to reflect and look back on the season I've just had and plan for the next one. Everything is cyclical. I love the spring. I love the growing of the wild garlic. I love the ingredients. I love the occasional muntjac I'll hunt for my own table here. So it's a wonderful time of year as well. Here in the southeast of England, we have a lot of very different terrains and habitats, ecosystems. My fallow deer are primarily on large open downland fields. And downland is a fascinating sort of type of ground. It's where basically the ice age finished and the glaciers pushed up huge areas and heaps of moraines. That created this vast rolling landscape of wide open arable fields that are very fertile. Now the fallow deer have learnt to take shelter on this land, so it's a very challenging environment to hunt them. But then on another piece of land a mere 10 miles away, I've got 8 miles of river bank and river edge and water meadow, which is tangled and thick and home to the muntjac and the roe deer. And then there's the old deciduous forest, where we have clumps and big areas of gorgeous oak and beech and ash forest. I find that the art of hunting is something that's deeply satisfying. And I'm not talking about killing, I'm talking about hunting. And the joy of hunting is the ability to learn about nature and learn fieldcraft so that you can outwit the deer. Now, deer are very intelligent animals, and getting close is surely the ideal of our art. And indeed, that's why in Britain we don't call it hunting, we don't call it shooting, we call it stalking. And there's a good reason for that. So there's many different habitats and 3 different species of deer. We have the muntjac, the smallest, now probably 1 million strong in the south of England. And we have the roe deer, an indigenous species. And then finally we have the fallow deer. And the fallow deer was pushed out by the Ice Age and reintroduced probably by the Romans, we think. The fallow deer are a very intelligent, successful animal, and without doubt my favourite quarry on earth. I love to hunt the fallow deer. They're such survivors, they're so intelligent. I have huge respect for them. They're very difficult to hunt. Due to the fact that I've got this incredible array of different deer and different environments upon which to hunt, I have to have a different selection of equipment. With the fallow deer on these big wide open fields, we have to push the distances a little further than most deer. Most deer are hunted in Britain at 80, 90, 100 meters of distance. So precision is my absolute watchword. And to that end, I've been using for years now the Leica Magnus scope, which I love. The 2.4 to 16. 16 power is great because if the deer's at 300 meters, I can still place the bullet accurately where I want on the animal. It's got a very, very fine reticle, which is terribly important to me. I hate big fat reticles. So the little illumination is very useful. A lot of my deer are shot low light, so last light in the evening. And I find that edge to edge on that scope, I get amazing clarity right up to the very last light. Great optical quality, adjustability, and robustness. And that is so important. I'm always rattling around in the old truck and things get hard life. I've never yet had a Magnus go off zero. I've never had to go back and re-zero it because it's been knocked or whatever. And then, of course, binoculars, really important. And if you're going to shoot at distance, you must know the range. So the HDB Leica rangefinders are just changed everything for me. As soon as they came out, my shooting, my deer recovery, everything got better. The combination of a great scope and great binoculars is critical. Now, this rifle is brand new, and so is the scope. So what I've got to do is bore sight it. That means I've got to align the center of the barrel with the crosshairs. So I look down the middle of the barrel and I line it up with the target. Then I look through the scope and I adjust the turrets until the dot is where I think it ought to be in the middle. And that means it's roughly sighted in. Then we start shooting, and during the shooting process we can adjust as we go and to get it so it's perfectly square. And what I want is for the dot to be dead on, so the zero at about 150 yards, okay? And that's perfect for this caliber 308. Modern rifles have just come on so far, and I personally like rifles with non-wood stocks. I like plastic, artificial, carbon fiber rifles, and I love the action of the new Sauer, the 404. It's a beautiful gun and shoots very, very accurately. And if the stock configuration is excellent, it's got a great safety catch, which is crucial, and most importantly for me on a rifle, that trigger. Trigger has got to be precise. Because I'm so particular about the rifles, and it's not just about a rifle and a scope, what you put through it is key. So ammunition. Because I've always had a great deal of difficulty in finding ammunition that really shoots perfectly through my rifles, I've always loaded my own, and I use exclusively Hornady components. I find the brass is fantastic, it works really well, to the extent that I even put the 303 Hornady brass in the butt of my knives, because I love them so much. It's very easy to use for a kind of technology stupid guy like me. And I find I can really juggle around with loads and combinations and bullets to get just what I want. Recently, I've been trying the new ETX bullet by Hornady. It's a 165 grain bullet, really efficient. We waste very, very few bullets because we know after hours on the range that where we put that crosshair is where that bullet will go. There should be no guesswork in shooting a deer. Dropping them on the spot with a perfect shot is so important to me. You should know when you squeeze the trigger, the deer is going down and it's not going to suffer. And if there's to be a future in this sport, then non-hunters have to realize that we do everything we can to minimize the potential for suffering with wildlife. Those are my mainstays, and of course, I was unhappy with the performance of anything out there, so I designed my own knives because, you know, the carcass of an animal, once you've shot it and once we've dispatched that animal, then I see it as a chef. I cease to see it as just a dead deer. For me, it's however many kilos of amazing meat. Hunters should pay so much respect to these animals in death, and we should use every gram of meat that we can. So the way I look after that carcass and dress it is so very, very important. The thing that truly makes me happy when I'm out is working with my dogs. When you get a dog that works well, that's intelligent, that's well behaved and calm, it really enhances your abilities and your pleasure. Because let's face it, what we do is a very solitary enterprise. You know, we get up very early in the morning, we creep around the woods, we sit and wait over valleys looking for the right deer to shoot, not any deer to shoot. And our dogs have to learn to do that with us. It's extraordinary, really. They're both mongrels, there's nothing special about them. I took these dogs from a very young age and I just took them hunting with me, nothing else really. Taught them to sit and stay. And those dogs, they know when a deer's around. They know when they need to find one. The thing about man working with a dog is something so primal that goes back thousands and thousands of years. And having my dogs along with me when I'm hunting is a source of huge pleasure for me. There's something deeply spiritual about the going out there into the wild, outwitting your prey, bringing home that prey and consuming it. And that is, to me, the focal point of life. I think perhaps it would feel a little cynical of me if I managed the deer over the course of the year just to sell them to other people. So for us here at home, it's a really, really important source of protein. When I serve my customers food, I like all the flavors to work together, but to try and bring the countryside inside and put it on the plate. And I want people to sort of feel like the essence of the hunt has made it into the restaurant, onto their table.